is one of the biggest parties she's ever had, and she is at the center of all our thoughts, and I've no doubt there's a big smile on her face. Our home was always very welcoming. No matter what state it was in, no matter what was or wasn't in the fridge, our mother was unburdened by perfectionism. Born on Valentine's Day, she had a big, warm heart. She was genuinely interested in people and wanted to hear about their lives. She had a particular ear for people's pain, and she was a great listener. Sometimes our kitchen became a sort of confessional, and this raised problems at times for my poor father, because conversations were being conducted with great reverence, and he needed to get something from the fridge, or his dinner, whatever. And I remember at one point he was always tentative about interrupting, but he did, and he came back, and he clearly had gone in at the wrong moment, and he just said, "Oh God," he said, "this place is getting more like the Black Rock Clinic every day." I think if our mother gave us empathy, our father balanced that with a refreshing, no-nonsense black humour. The blend of both their gifts has given us a genuine regard for human pain, but also an ability not to be overwhelmed by it, and it's been very important. Our mother was born in jail, in Kilkenny, to be precise. That jail, a jail that's no longer there. Her father was governor, and by coincidence, our father grew up in a nearby army barracks, where his father was commanding officer, and these two elderly gentlemen knew each other. But our parents didn't really meet until much later in their lives. They once the young Martin Bates was going to finish a course in Cork, and his father rang up my mother's father and said, "Look, could he put him up in the barracks for a few days?" And he said, "Not at all." He said, "We'll have him over to the house." So he came and stayed in the house where my mother was living at that time. She was about 20 then. And he took a fancy, and he tried to ask her out a few times, and she refused. She was painfully shy. But eventually a friend persuaded her to go on a date, and within a year, as the story goes, they were engaged. They both moved to Dublin, and our mother found work in a building that is now Fallon and Burns in Wicklow Street, and many of you would know this. At that time, it was the Dublin Telephone Exchange. And even as a young adult, she was plugged in to people and listening to their woes. And the telephone was to become quite a theme in her life. She also had a dream she always wanted to be somebody within the caring profession. And in 1951 was offered a place in Guy's Hospital to train in the field of medicine. But life, as it does, took her down a different path, and the arrival of children did a lot to stymie her career plans. But coming back to the phone, my mother was always on the phone, and that was how she made her mark. With that fact and her extraordinary gifts of empathy and acceptance and care, made her a perfect fit for the Samaritans. But first she had to set up the Samaritans, and with other women, I remember them in our front living room meeting and having meetings about trying to get the organization off the ground, having a sale of work in the garage beside us to raise money to get the organization. And that was 69, 70, 71. But she worked in the Samaritans for 46 years, and she served in so many roles as founder, member, to director, to regular volunteer, and did her duty every weekend until her mid-80s. The Samaritans, the Psalms, were her other family and her footnote in history. The beautiful portrait that you see here this morning is by David Cook, was commissioned by the Samaritans and unveiled last year in their Dublin headquarters as a tribute to her. And that meant an extraordinary amount to her. In 2001, we lost our dad suddenly. He was only 74. His death was a terrible shock, and it was a very hard time for all of us. Our mother's passing is sad, but it's a very different experience. She was 90. She was ready to die, and she did so beautifully. Our mother always said a person's death could touch people in a very personal way. In that sense, she said, their dying could be their final gift to people. And I've been wondering about our mother's final gift to us. She faced her suffering with confidence. She died peacefully, on her own terms, in her own time. Perhaps her gift is to encourage us not to be afraid of whatever transition, difficulty, or uncertainty we may be facing in our lives. I think she would encourage us to walk confidently into the future, to know that we can handle it, we can deal with it, not to be afraid, to relax. And with friends, and with laughter, and with a good food and a glass of wine, we'll get there. My thanks to each of you on behalf of my brothers and